Hey everybody, Deathblade here with another reaction video to the Untamed. I have a confession to make. This is actually going to be a re-record. I did the whole episode and didn't have the mic setting correct, and so I didn't have any audio. So that was a real disappointment. I did that a couple days ago. So I'm going to re-record. I'm not going to fake any reactions. I did have a couple kind of wow moments or something in my original recording. I'm just going to have to forget about those. But there were a bunch of different parts where I had commentary or observations that I'm going to go back through and find those, pause it, and then do the reactions like I did in the first video. So this is not going to be a complete, true, and authentic reaction video, but I did have some really interesting stuff that I noticed that I wanted to share with you. If you like this kind of content, please do like and subscribe to the channel. The links are in the description below, or you can also, well, you can find the link in the description below to my website, where the website is jeremybai.com. I am a translator of Chinese fantasy novels and a writer, and I have a whole bunch of stuff that you can find on my website linking to all the different things that I have done if you're not familiar with that. So with that, let's get started on the Untamed Season 1, Episode 4.
糟了，拜礼要开始了。
So a couple different things. Before they mentioned, he called it, I think he said the starting ceremony or something. Specifically, it was the baili, and that's a set combination of characters that means to offer formal greetings, but also gifts. And as you can see here, they're all clasping their hands and kind of bowing at the waist. The different ways that clasping hands and bowing happens is different, I've noticed, in different Xianxia shows, but in any case it is featured in almost all of the novels and also in historical China, clasping hands and bowing at the waist. And of course there's also kowtowing, which I think we'll see some of in this episode as well. Right, so here's the kowtowing, of course. Okay, so this is actually something I didn't notice or pick up on my first time around, but in the translations, what they're translating as principles is actually right here. Basically what I would call just house rules. Basically, I'm not sure why they went to principles. And I mean, it's kind of obvious from what he's saying. They're basically just talking about all the rules of their clan, it seems like. Yeah, he calls them 3,000 principles. So as I mentioned before, it involves the giving of gifts, which is what's going on right now and for the next couple minutes in the scene.
来临今世，金子轩，拜见先生，家父。
Okay, I think this is interesting and worth noting. If you're not really watching too closely, you might just assume all of these people are wearing like white robes. But if you look and see, it's pretty clear that they are actually different styles. They have different trimmings. You know, these ones here are blue and have this specific design on the shoulder. And I think the ones standing over here have a different design, and these have the gold trim. And anyway, the reason I'm pointing this out is because in the novels and in the shows as well, usually they can identify a person based on their clothing in terms of what organization or clan they come from. Later in this episode, we're going to have the people from the, what is it called? Sorry, I forget the name, but they have like the black and red robes. That's super obvious. But even in the case where they're all wearing these like light colored robes, you would be able to tell where they're from by the designs, the cut, and the colors. And then a lot of times in the novels, at least, even the ranking system within that organization is obvious based on the clothes, but at the same time, they would be still identifiable as from this certain organization or that certain organization, but their rank would be obvious based on how ornate their clothing is or what the design is, to the point where a lot of times even people from the other organizations would be able to look at them and be like, oh, you're an elder from this clan, or you're a outer sect disciple from this sect, or something like that.
特意为先生广寻天下之经典，编就河洛经史书一套。 并用金线编成，还望先生。
So I actually had to look this up, but if these two characters right here kind of jumped out to me. They translated in English as Hilo, basically He Luo. This Luo character, especially, I know this character well because there basically isn't really a translation for it. It's the name of a river. And so I see it come up a lot of times in combinations with other characters to make cool sounding names. I looked up on my phone these specific characters, He Luo, and my dictionary is telling me that it's the basin between the Yellow River and that Luo River, which is associated with this character here. So in any case, I'm not sure if this has significance in the show or the universe of the novel or whatever, but it did jump out to me. Really quickly again, here's another one where you can very clearly see the designs on their shoulder and how it differs from his design, and how over here they don't have a design. So just further emphasis of that whole costume thing.
不要。清河聂氏府。
Sorry, I gotta check something here. Okay, basically this guy's name is Meng Yao. I guess Meng is the same surname as the character Meng Hao from I Shall Seal the Heavens. So that's the translation that kind of got everything started for me, at least. Just little trivia point, this guy has the same surname.
这是谁啊？
请先生不弃笑。
他就是那个孟瑶。哦，这孟瑶便是金宗主的私生子吧？听说他曾前去金家认亲，结果被踹下。
Okay, so I gotta point out, this is something that is always in the novels, and I'm not as experienced with the shows nowadays, but the peanut gallery or the comment gallery always happens in the novels, and here it is in the show as well, where you have some people off to the side like kind of making comments that are sort of like under their breath but everybody can hear. And then in the novels, at least, it often drives exposition, so you learn the background information or whatever that the author doesn't want to just tell you.
金陵台后来才投到这清河聂氏的门下，同为金宗主之子，这待遇可真是一个天上一个地下呀。
安静。
素闻聂宗主手下有一得力副使，今日一见，谈吐温文，果然不凡。
So I don't know much about the story, but I just got to point out that what happened a moment ago was that some people said some pretty embarrassing things. I mean, I think it just in general, but especially in the context of Chinese culture. And then for him to come down and say something really nice, obviously is giving this guy a lot of face and sort of like restoring the face that he lost just moments ago and probably surpassing what he lost.
监督有命，派我暗中查访，不宜
Okay,
打草。
sorry, this stuck out to me last time. I gotta go back and check what she says in Chinese because the translation seems off.
监督有命，
Okay, well, I guess it does. I guess she's just right in front of the other disciples mentioning her secret investigation. Maybe it's assumed that they're too distracted or something.
派我暗中查访，不宜打草惊蛇。
And this is an interesting thing that this doesn't come across in the translation either. It's a really common expression to beat the grass and then startle the snake. It's a really common expression in Chinese. I think it's obvious what it means just hearing what it says. I like to translate these things literally. I think a lot of people enjoy that literal translation of the obvious idioms. Of course, it doesn't really work well in the subtitles. If you put beat the grass and startle the snake in the subtitles, it probably wouldn't come across as well. So I think for subtitle purposes, it's probably fine to leave this kind of stuff out.
那既然如此，温公子，你又为何特意前来呢？
哪儿来的鼠辈？
鼠辈不敢当。
Oh, right. So hang dog. Like I had to look up hang dog to even see what it means. I have a pretty good vocabulary. Maybe I just haven't come across this word before, or maybe I forgot. Jumping to the Chinese real quick, he says shu bei. Shu means rat, and bei just means kind of like usually means like a person. So I would possibly have translated this as rat or scoundrel or something. I don't mind using complicated and archaic words, but words that are so weird like hang dog, I would avoid it. What do you guys think? Has anyone out there seen hang dog used in any kind of modern literature or modern English?
云梦江氏，魏无羡。
Oh, and one more thing. So in here, where he says, hold on a second. Let me jump to.
哪儿来的鼠辈？
Oh, yes. He says, I don't deserve to be called a. But here it's kind of a little bit funny. He uses the expression 不敢当, which is more something you would say. I mean, technically it does mean I don't deserve to, but I think when you say I don't deserve, it has different feelings in English depending on how you use it. He's kind of switching around to make it sound as though this guy actually complimented him. So it's kind of a little clever. The Wei Wuxian's dialogue is always very clever in Chinese, I think. Did I just catch a... Did you guys notice that? If you watch Wei Wuxian's hand, he like kind of flips the sword out, but then he kind of drops it. Looks like right here. Nope.
想要练胆量，首先得会玩。玩？怎么玩？我可以教你啊。
Okay, so this is a subject I'm planning to actually record a full video on, which is how to translate the word for play. It's basically just wrong here. Normally, adults in English aren't going to say, let's go play. But the Chinese character is the same for what little kids will do and then certain activities that adults might participate in. So I'm going to leave it at that for this comment. I'm literally planning to record that maybe after this video. I'm not sure. And hopefully It'll be up in a couple of weeks, and I'll try to link to it in this video later once it's up, if I can remember.
金兄，金兄，是我，是我，嗨，一定没听见，耳朵不好。
魏兄，你居然敢去招惹大名鼎鼎的蓝湛蓝二公子！我来蓝氏这么久，见了他也只敢绕道而走。
这算什么？我跟你们说，我昨天晚上还跟他干了一架呢。
你跟蓝忘机打架？魏兄，你可真是嚣张啊！
哎呀，我跟你们说，你们俩是不知道昨天晚上那个情境多么的激烈，夜黑。
So I just want to point out that in a previous video I mentioned that their initial fight, I didn't find it very impressive, and I saw some comments in response to that on like social media and in the comments saying that it was supposed to be like that. It was supposed to be like dance-like because of spoilers for later and whatnot. I still feel the same way, especially after seeing scenes like this. I get the impression that Lan Wangji, or I'm not sure how the fandom normally refers to him, is it Lan Zhan? In any case, is supposed to be like respected and feared and looked up to as this like really amazing and powerful and dangerous person, which we have seen in the show before this. So that's why I feel like that fight between them, yeah, I get the dramatic implication and whatnot, but I feel like although the dance part was cool, there wasn't enough that came across to me as being like, wow, this guy really is a good fighter, or they both are actually. Anyway, that's my opinion. You know, there are a lot of dance-like flowery fight scenes in different Wuxia and Xianxia shows that I've seen over the years. So it doesn't turn me off. It's just I feel like it could have been more impactful. But that's just me.
叔父。
So here, let me fast forward to show the faces.
蓝氏举办听学以来
Is it going to show the faces? Come on. Yes. Just now he addressed him as Shishu, which basically Shi means sect or organization, and then Shu means uncle. So he's referring to him as what I would translate, depending on the context, as like sect uncle or something along those lines. I have a whole video talking about that kind of stuff, which you can see here. I'm going to pay attention now to see what other people will call him, because I'm not sure who exactly he is. Grandmaster I don't like, because Grandmaster to me, I think in my mind, I usually use it to mean the master of one's master, and master being a formal like relationship that in which someone agrees to teach you or takes you in as an apprentice, and then that person's master would be your grandmaster. That's how I usually try to stick to that to make it clear.
其先府不夜天，有如一城。
Well, this is one of those cases where you have like a term crossover. That's something I came up with, term crossover, because in Chinese it's really easy to assign a meaning to one character or word and then have it conflict later when a similar character combination or word combination has a very specific defined definition. And this is a perfect example of that, where their residence, the Nightless City, is like a city. Like, what? In the translation, it doesn't come across. In Chinese, if they had translated it as Nightless Heaven or some other thing, then this crossover confusion wouldn't happen.
梦瑶为念。
Yeah. So this jumped out to me in the first one, but I never stopped to analyze it. He calls himself a guest, but the truth is these two characters here are a little bit more complicated than that. It's Ke Qing, which it's hard to translate. In the past, I think I have translated this as vassal in some situations. It's basically referring to somebody who is attached to or formally hired by some clan or sect, but isn't like a full-on member. So they have ranking and title to some extent, but are not full members. It could be, in this case, he comes across to me as almost like a servant, but the point is just that he is not an official member. I just want to point out that I really like needle stuff. One of the very first characters I created for a Wuxia role-playing game was a needle person who had needles up his sleeves and was like throwing poison needles and stuff. So yeah, I think that stuff is really cool.
阿成，咱们江氏厉家先祖本就是游侠出身，
Right.
崇尚
Okay. So Rangers. Let's pull this up in Chinese really quick.
他何时才能为云梦江氏做些考虑？
阿成，咱们江氏厉家先祖本就是游侠出。
Okay, so what she calls him in Chinese is Yo Xia, and this character Xia is the same character Xia as from Wuxia and Xianxia, and basically means hero, but maybe a little bit more complexity thrown in. And then Yo means wander. So essentially, she was saying that her was it the parents are wandering heroes. This is a really I don't want to say loaded, but it's a very meaningful term, the Wuxia, both historically and in the Wuxia and Xianxia stuff. So I personally think translating it as rangers is just because ranger has such a set meaning in fantasy elements, whether you're talking about Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, or even the Wild West, which is totally different, but there's so many definitions of ranger that don't even really touch on this. So I might have called them, if I was doing the translation, might have called them wandering heroes, or perhaps wandering swordsmen, or something along those lines, even wandering cultivators, since this is a cultivation world. I think the idea is that these would be people who weren't necessarily affiliated with a specific sect or big clan or something, and instead were wandering wandering China or the world or whatever, righting wrongs, fighting for the common people. Sometimes you'll see it translated as knight errant. Anyway, I haven't done a whole video on the Xia thing. I kind of want to in the future as well. Okay, I'm sorry, but this part is just so gross. Just the idea of eating this, it looks like, it's hard to see here, but it doesn't look like it's been scaled or maybe partially scaled, and he's just chomping at it and then picking bones out of his mouth. I'm sorry, it's so gross. Although I have to point out that for those people who are not familiar with Chinese culture, it's not really that, I wouldn't say, let's just say it's more common in Chinese culture to eat in this kind of way. I personally, it's hard for me to do it. But yeah. It just looks so gross. I'm sorry, but is there anybody out there who doesn't think that this is gross? Leave me a comment.
那我就来考考你，妖魔鬼怪是不是同一种东西？
Okay, so this is a very interesting thing here.
为何不
Back
是
up real quick.
如
I'm gonna
已
have to
经
do
不用
this a
听
couple
我讲
times.
了。那我就来考考你，妖魔鬼怪。
妖魔鬼怪. And then in English, okay, so this is a kind of interesting subject. Now, in Chinese, it's calling them imps, demons, ghosts, and monsters. I have my own sort of standard for how I translate these things to try to keep it clear what is what. Yao, I usually translate as demon. Mo, I translate as devil. Gui, I translate as a ghost. And Guai, I would maybe translate as monster or fiend or freak, or it depends. I don't often see Guai used in the stuff that I have translated, but it is a common word. Now, I have a whole video talking about some of these things, where I kind of break down how complicated they are. In Chinese, you can combine different characters with other characters to make words that contain both or some or whatever. Pretty complicated topic, but I think this is an interesting part. And now, incidentally, I have a collaboration video coming up with another YouTuber about this topic. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. It could be weeks or months, because we're kind of going back and forth with different our scripts and recordings and whatnot. But I want you to notice how he defines these things in this upcoming dialogue, because it's a great sort of primer for these creatures. Now, again, they're translating it differently than I would. The main way being what they translate as imp and demon, I translate as demon and devil. But other than that, it's pretty cool. So pay attention as this scene unfolds.
是不是同一种东西？
不是，
为何不是？如何区分？
妖者非
demons
人之活物所化，魔者生人所化，鬼者死者所化，怪者非人之死物所化。
妖与怪极易混淆，举例区分。
So here he's talking Yao and Guai. So in the video I'm going to be doing the collaboration on, we're going to be talking about Yao Guai, because they can be combined into one word. So continuing on watching here.
好比你身后那棵活树，沾染书香之气100年，化成人形，有了意识，此为妖。
That's Yao
若我
or
拿了一把
demon, as I
板
would
斧，
translate it.
拦腰砍断，只剩个死树墩儿，他在修炼成精，此为怪。先生，灵气而气。
So he's talking about Ling Qi and Yuan Qi, and I think it's pretty obvious from the context here. The Ling Qi is the spiritual energy, which usually the cultivators absorb from nature or whatever, and then Yuan Qi, like as is being explained in this sort of section, a lot of times is associated with ghosts or with dead things, and so most of the time, the righteous or orthodox part of the cultivation world is not going to use that, because it would be considered something like devilish or evil or something. So that falls right in line with what I've seen in all my translations, at least.
你若是想到了，各世家就容不得你了，滚！
So he just, in English, they translated it as get out, and he just said 滚, which you could translate it as get out, but it's a little bit more harsh than that. A lot of times you'll see translators say screw off or get the hell out of here or something. It's a pretty harsh term. Like I used to teach kids in China, and there were many times where I told a kid to get out of the classroom for being bad or something. But if I ever used the word 滚 on a kid to tell him to get out of the classroom, I probably would have gotten in trouble from the school because that's really harsh.
来，手放地。
So I'm definitely not an expert on this stuff, but I do follow some channels who do videos about historical martial arts, historical weapons and whatnot. For instance, like Metatron or Shadowversity, or Scalagrim. I know there's a channel specifically about archery called, I think, New Sensei. And so I'm just actually curious if anybody out there has watched stuff like that, please leave a comment. I'm curious if this is authentic or realistic in terms of how ancient Chinese archers would draw the bow and whatnot, knock the arrow. Of course, in the cultivation world, usually the bows and arrows end up being magical, so it doesn't really matter anyway, but he does seem to be practicing actual real archery, so I'm curious. Okay, so that's it for this reaction video. I'm gonna stop it before it goes to the next one. Again, I'll state that I think there's a lot of little nitpicky things about the translation that I would take issue with, but overall it's good. Thanks everyone for the comments. Please don't spoil me if possible, because I do plan to continue to watch this show. If you like the channel, again, like and subscribe, or check the description for more ways to support. And that's it for this episode. I'll see you next time. Gautzla.